In today's video, I'm going to break down for you what it actually takes to finally overcome the overthinking, overanalyzing, replaying of events over and over in our minds in the most practical, straightforward, applicable way possible. And I want to do this video because, like me, so many of my clients have struggled with this. And I know that before I discovered what it took, I would be in situations, whether they were professional, clinical, maybe even casual on the streets, and I would find myself leaving these situations and then having a mental drama going on over and over in my head over what I could have said different, what I should have done different, what are they thinking about me right now? Why was I so stupid? How come I said that? And it would almost become like a fixation in my brain, something that I couldn't put down, that would just kind of hang out hours, if not days, after the encounter. And so before we jump in, what I want to do is just take a moment to introduce myself to any of you that don't know me. And I'm Amanda, and I am a transformation coach. So what does that mean? Well, I like you to consider me your friend with benefits. Why your friend with benefits? Because this channel is committed to having very casual conversations around those day-to-day things that we're out there discussing with our friends at coffee, but we don't really know what to do with. And we take those concepts and those places where we get hung up. And my goal is to give you really hands-on, applicable, equipping information and tools to start experiencing transformation in your life. It's a what to do type of conversation. Now, if you like the way that I coach, you like what you're experiencing on the channel, you want to learn more about working with me one-on-one, I've got links below that will get you directly into my email, will get you all the details on the ways that could work, what that might look like, and if it's the best fit for you. Also have a link to our newsletter, which will keep you up to speed on our book clubs, group events, live events, and any other special things that we might have going on. You're not going to want to check that out. And if this video resonates with you or you found it helpful, be sure to like and subscribe so that you keep more of these applicable, life-changing tips coming right to your channel. All right, with that, let's jump in on what it actually takes to overcome the overanalyzing once and for all. Well, if you know me, or you've been around it all, or maybe you've even been in the self-help space, you might hear a lot about positive thinking or healthy mindset or positive mindset or whatever version of those words you have heard. So the first thing I want to do is break down that on my channel, we talk about a affirmative and a negative versus a positive and a negative. What's the distinction here? Well, oftentimes we have a lot of cognitive association to the word positive, and it kind of tends to have like oh, warm and fuzzy, just look past what doesn't like me, or what I don't like, keep my eye on what's going good, and there's some value in that. However, when we switch out the word positive for affirmative, and we contrast that to the negative, we get a little more substance behind what we're talking about. So let me give you an example. If I was speaking in a negative, I would be sharing with you something I don't want. So I might say to you, I don't want to get sick. That would be a negative. Conversely, if I said to you, I want to stay healthy, that would be the affirmative, or what might be referenced to as the positive. However, using the word affirmative reminds us that it's an affirmation. I am healthy. Let's take another example. I don't want to gain weight. Okay. That would be to the negative. The affirmative might be, I would like to create a size 6. So notice the affirmative is to the positive. So that doesn't mean being positive about my current weight in terms of like, I just got to think positive over here. Once again, has some value, but we're outlining here the difference between operating in the affirmative versus the negative. And this is always, always our key to victory. In other words, it is absolutely necessary to have an affirmative. Without one, we are in what we might call a neutral, or we would remain in the negative. So let's say that I say that I don't want to get sick. Well, it's imperative to understand that our brain does not have a gear for don't, quit, stop, lose, no, seize, limit. It doesn't have that gear because it's wired to create. So what happens when I'm speaking in terms of what I don't want, my brain is deleting the word don't. So although linguistically I am saying I don't want to get sick, my subconscious mind only hears I want to get sick. Interesting, right? The word is a linguistic tool for us, but it has no backing in the subconscious mind. So if I walk around speaking in the what we'll term the negative versus the affirmative, my brain is getting constant reinforcement that I want to get sick, which therefore actually increases the likelihood of me getting sick. In our weight example, if I say I want to lose 60 pounds, I want to lose 60 pounds, I want to lose 60 pounds. Because lose is a deficit word, just like a don't, right? If this was a baseline, we know from math, right? If we go under the bridge, we're in the negative. So here's my baseline, and if this is what I don't want, it's a negative. Versus talking about what I do as an affirmative. I'm moving above the baseline. I'm operating in the black. So if I'm saying I want to lose 60 pounds, remember lose is a deficit word, my brain, every time that I have that thought or speak that out, my brain hears I want 60 pounds. I want to 60 pounds. I want to 60 pounds. And as the brilliant machine that it is, it will start to make sure that it attracts anything to make sure that it gets us what we want. And it will begin attracting things that ensure that we get 60 pounds. When in actuality, what we wanted was the size 6. So instead of saying I want to lose 60 pounds, that's a negative, it's what I don't want, right? I want to speak in affirmatives. I want to create a size 6. I want to create a size 6. My brain starts to attract anything and everything that will draw to me the tools, people, resources, information that I need to become a size 6. So we can see this, right? Sickness versus health, weight versus fitness, kind of straightforward. So what happens when our negative, when our thing we don't want is overanalyzing? What is it that we plug in? Because it's absolutely necessary to plug in. So one of the myths around overanalyzing and overthinking is that I just want to learn how to stop. Notice that's not the title of the video. The video is how to overcome. Because stop, I want to just stop overthinking. I just want to stop overthinking. I just want to stop overthinking. Our brain, because it's wired to create, doesn't have a gear for stop. So our brain hears, I just want to overthinking. 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 Also, it's really important to note that what we resist persists. And having just walked through the mechanics of that, we can understand that. So if I'm saying no, don't, stop, quit, not for me, I'm essentially resisting, like I'm trying to push it out. I'm like, go. And by universal law, what we resist persists. But what we transcend, we end. Okay? If I can transcend that, get out of resistance and into transcendence, now I can end it. So Amanda, what do? What's the bridge? Well, first of all, we need a word that puts us into the affirmative. And before we go into what that word is, let's look at the definition of our word overanalyze. When we find that we're overanalyzers, we can relate, or at least I know I can, to the idea of picking something apart. And that's what analyze means. It means to put it under a microscope, to stare it down, and to pick it into pieces, to analyze, to take a whole and to pull it into pieces. And so when we overdo that, I overanalyze anything. Anyone else ever heard themselves say that, right? When we find ourselves not only analyzing, which is to pull apart and to pull into pieces and to dissect, when we overdo that, we're bringing it down even to even smaller pieces. That's really, we're indicating how unnecessary that is to pull it apart into so many tiny pieces and to really study them as if we're going to get all the answers if we just keep picking. When we look at that and we realize that's what we're doing in our own mind, we can begin to recognize that overanalyzing is a psychologically violent act. It means to take something that is whole and to keep picking and dissecting and pulling it apart so that it's no longer whole, so that we can see all the little things about it. Anything that was outside of us, if we took a physical object and began doing that, it would be breaking it up and just pulling it apart. We would recognize that as an act of aggression, right? And that's what we're doing to ourselves every time that we put ourselves through this overanalyzing. And I know if you're like me or like most of my clients, you can relate to that feeling. It's exhausting. It wears us out. It wears us out. We feel defeated. Just makes us feel like we're not actually doing anything right because all we see in all this analyzing is everything we did wrong. And we have more reasons to beat ourselves up than we did before we even got into the encounter that we're overanalyzing. So when we see this and we see that the overanalyzing, this is what I don't want to do, is an act of tearing apart. If this is to our negative, what then is our affirmative? Okay? Because if my negative over here in my example was sick and my affirmative was health, and my negative was extra weight and my affirmative was a size 6, what in the heck do we plug in for overanalyzing? Because we know we can't just stop. Because if we're just going to stop, it's going to persist because our brain doesn't have a gear for stop overanalyzing. It's just going to attract more and more reasons, and it's going to reaffirm that I want to overanalyze because it can't hear stop overanalyzing. It'll just hear overanalyzing, and it will make sure it attracts more and more, and that I get conditioned to do it more and more often. So, to transcend, which is what we need to do to end, to overcome. Okay, let's think of it as a bridge. If we're going to overcome that, if we're going to move, if we're going to bridge out of the negative into the affirmative, we're going to overcome the habit, not resist it, but overcome it. Then we have to implement an affirmative. In this case, our affirmative is synthesize. Analyze, synthesize. Synthesize is when you take all kinds of pieces and you look at them and figure out how they fit into the whole. It's to bring pieces together and recognize that they have a place in a larger whole. So what does this look like? when it comes to our overanalyzing, our replaying in our head, our tearing apart the situation, us going over and over again, what we could have done different, what we should have done different, why did I say that? I can't believe I did that. I feel like an idiot, da 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 da. None of this is serving us. So, in a real life application, when we find ourselves in that situation, we've just had the encounter, the old voices are just going into their habit of overanalyzing, which, hey, no shame, no judgment, that's been their pattern. That's been their pattern. With all the love that's in them, they're trying to help us see what we could have done different, because actually they just want us to perform at our best. They're actually showing up because we have something inside of us that wants to show up as our best to as many people as we can. And we know what we're made of, and we want to do what it takes to show that what we're made of out here to other people. So these parts that are doing this, they're not to be judged. We don't want to dislike them. We don't want to find ourselves saying, I hate the parts of myself that I hate that I overanalyze that. Whoa, 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 time out. Those parts of us are showing up in the highest form of love that they know, because they know there's a part of us that wants to show up in excellence. So they're like, hey, like if we just rethink it then and just kind of like break it down, then we'll figure out. And as loving as the offering is for those of us that have struggled with this or do struggle with this, at the end of the day, we just kind of know that emotionally that's not what we experience. Because even though that might have been how the intentions began, what it's turned into is just an ongoing inner battery, which ultimately, guys, is domestic violence. Violence against myself on the home turf. Violence within the home, in this place where we live, where our minds and souls reside in here. It's ongoing violence. Picking it apart, telling us what we did wrong, how stupid we are, how much we mess up, how we can never get it right. So, we're faced with a choice. We can continue to fall into the pattern, which is just going to get us the same results, because we've already got the formula for getting those results. It's follow this formula. Or when those tendencies come on scene, we can say, thank you, I appreciate you. And in order to get something different, I'm choosing to move into something different. So what does that different look like? Well, we get this opportunity to see whatever happened in our interaction as a synthesis, as part of a greater whole, okay? So let's say, for example, it's a meeting. We're at work, there were questions, the team is working on a big project, and you were trusted with the task of presenting information that was going to help work towards a specific solution. And the meeting came, and you got up there, and some of your colleagues or some of the board members had questions, and you didn't have that information. And comments were made. Well, how can we move forward without this? Or isn't that a big part of this? Isn't that why we're meeting to begin with? How do we not have a strategy for addressing this specific sect of the situation? Okay. In our old selves, we might have left the meeting going, I can't believe that. Why didn't I just have the information? And I can't believe I just stood there while they talked to me like that. I should have said, I'm sorry. I should have went and got the information. I just feel so stupid. How could I possibly do that? I can't even believe that I let myself have such a big oversight. I mean, I was just focused on X, and then they had questions about why. I'm so stupid for not even thinking about them having questions about why. Gosh, I always do this. No wonder I can't get a promotion. This is what I always do. Sound familiar? Right? Yeah, of course, because this is what we've done for so long. And the part of us that thinks if we just beat ourselves up enough, we'll change, we found out from usually years of this behavior that we're kind of haven't changed. Meaning we probably have changed, but we're not giving ourselves credit for our change because all our mind is fixing on is all those places where there was what we would label a misstep. So how do we do this different? How does that exact same situation move from overanalyzing to synthesizing? Okay, because one is an act of violence and one is an act of love. Let me offer you the alternative. You've been at the meeting. You were tasked with a specific task. Your colleagues and board members have questions around why, and you have only prepared for statistics related to X. Now, you leave the boardroom, and in your mind, you're thinking to yourself, all the same old things. I can't believe it. Oh, I can't believe it. Why did I do that? Blah, blah, blah. Ah. Yeah. You know what? When I really consider the big picture of this, everything that happened in that boardroom is the catalyst and springboard for where we're going. There is a bigger picture, and there will be multiple dynamics that we haven't addressed yet, starting with why. I came prepared for X, which starts the conversation that gave the opportunity to recognize that there was a need for statistics on Y. And I'm happy to assemble that information and get it to the team so that we can begin moving forward. But I recognize that this meeting is one of a series that it's going to take to get us to project completion. And in this sense, we begin to recognize that what we did in there was a piece of the whole and a critical piece of the whole. Because if we hadn't brought information on specific X, that would be the whole in the whole equation, right? So when we begin to realize, maybe it's a partner, maybe we have a disagreement with them and we can tell that they're frustrated, we're a little upset, maybe we're not talking, and we are just laying in bed thinking, how am I going to make this right? I just feel so stupid. I don't know what to do. This is frustrating me. Maybe I should have said this. And if they hadn't said that, and now we're laying in bed and all the overanalyzing is coming up, right? And we're back in that mind frame. We get the opportunity. We can continue to do that. It is a viable choice. We can continue to do that. Or we can switch into looking at it in the whole. The fact that we even had this discussion brings to light that this is one of our sticking points. As many things as I can think of to say right now, I'm really glad that these 3 things that I did say got on the table. And in the light of our relationship, I would much rather be having these conversations now than 10 years down the road, than 3 years down the road, than 3 months down the road. I am so grateful that even if it came from a place of us being angry at each other, this thing that we've both been pushing down finally got to surface. And so in the greater story of us and our unfolding, this has its place, whether it was today or later on. And I am just grateful that even if we didn't express it in the most loving, generous ways, some of it finally got to be expressed because I know for the health of our relationship, this was going to have to come up sometime. Notice, we are loving on the pieces in the affirmative, and we are violently assaulting them in the negative. This formula works every time that we hear ourselves saying what we don't want. We want to find the affirmative to our negative. Because remember, just saying, I need to quit that. I want to stop that. I just wish that would go away. Those are the very words that are going to get whatever we've vocalized over here or even thought about to persist. What we resist persists. So in order to stop hitting the wall of just repeating the pattern and repeating the pattern and repeating the pattern, we bridge the gap by finding the affirmative, right? So going back to our earlier examples, I don't want to get sick becomes I want to stay healthy. I don't want to gain weight, or I want to lose weight. Notice those, okay? We have a negative on both. We have a don't and a lose. So either way that we say them, if we continue to vocalize them in the negative, we will continue to attract them. Conversely, I don't want to gain the weight. I want to create the size 6. This is the affirmative that helps me to transcend my weight situation over into what I actually want, which is a specific size, okay? I just wish I could quit overanalyzing all the time. Quit is one of those words my brain doesn't have a gear for. It linguistically can understand someone saying that, but it doesn't have a gear for quitting. It only has a gear for creating. So I don't want to overanalyze. I wish I could just quit overanalyzing. We want to switch. We want to transcend into I am interested in synthesizing. I focus on synthesis. Remember, violence, love. Analyze, synthesize. Violence, love. A break apart word, a come together word. A break apart word, a come together word. When we begin to look at how does this fit into the bigger picture of where this thing is going, what the overall plan is, now we're in synthesis, okay? So we can practice this, especially in those times like when we're laying in bed at night and our mind is really racing. And what we're doing is recapping and recapping and recapping. We have the option to move into synthesizing and to fall asleep in the knowing of that all things are unfolding for us and that everything that we do is a contribution to where things are going, and we can begin to look at how it fits. And I want you to just try this out and notice how different it is to fall into sleep in a loving state and in a wholeness state versus a domestically violent state. Because this one's going to stimulate our brain and this one's going to help us relax because we're going to feel safe and held. This is going to keep our fear and our stress hormones high, which is going to keep us from sleep. Okay? It all works together, guys. Our mind, our body, and our spirits, they're all one. So in the comments, let me know if any of this resonated, if you found it helpful, if it brought up any more questions for you. And once again, you are interested in having these conversations one-on-one with me, be sure you check out the link below, get on that newsletter. We've always got stuff going. And until the next video, take care.